Hello and welcome to Unsourced Wall. My name is Elvis, and as always, I'm your host. Okay, so it's gonna be a jam-packed, review-filled episode, so let's just get on into it with some news topics. The biggest movie news that we have this week is that the new Dark Phoenix trailer is, surprisingly enough, pretty damn good. I never had a real dog in this fight, more just dumbfounded by the actions that Fox was taking with it, but it's good to see that there might actually be some merit with this entry. This trailer gives us a clear and intense look at the character drama and action that will presumably make up the core of the story, and it's all laid on with a thick brush of dark grandiosity. I can dig it. If you can actually pull off any of what it's showing, then it could be really fun. Apparently people find dark and dramatic completely untenable with the idea of fun, but I find that ridiculous. The set pieces look great, the interplay seems engaging, and the score cuts right into the emotional quotient. Not even Gene's weird American accent threw me off this time, and that was very distracting in Apocalypse. I honestly can't wait to see what's up now. Either it's just a good trailer and a horrible movie, or it might actually end up being a proper send-off. My only real concern is that there are rumors that the reshoots for this movie were mainly to turn this from the jumping off point for a third trilogy to a standalone finale, and that could be really clunky if they didn't do it right, so fingers crossed. In terms of DC movie news, it's only a little bit, but the only really new thing is that Aquaman 2 has a proposed release date now, November 2022, making that around 4 years since the release of the first one. Now, there's already been a lot of pot shots at that, but I don't mind it, honestly. I feel like the first ran through a lot of story, and the years in between might make the sequel feel like more of an event, and allow them to push the plot in advanced directions because of the time frame between them. Fingers crossed for that. And apparently there are rumors that WB is aiming to recast Will Smith as Deadshot for the Suicide Squad sequel, which makes no sense to me, since they've already said that it'll be all new characters. But if anything, I'd like to see DJ Jazzy Jeff in the role. I mean, I think he could pull it off. And lastly, in terms of movie news, we have the newest Hellboy trailer. And, well, it looks pretty damn bad. Like, it couldn't look any lamer if it tried. It's trying to be epic, funny, wry, self-aware, action-packed, gory, and overall quote-unquote cool, and not really doing any of that well. It just looks like an overstuffed mess that doesn't really know what it wants to do outside of aping more recent comic movies and Guillermo del Toro's version, but badly. Now, I'm not saying that Guillermo del Toro's version was the end-all be-all, but at least it was focused and it had a good head on its shoulders about what themes and tone it wanted to tackle. This is seemingly desiring to shove in as much as it can from the comics without taking the time to give any care about fostering that same sense of tone and atmosphere, even if they wanted to do something more comic accurate, because that was really the linchpin in what made those stories work in the first place. And it's something that the Guillermo del Toro version ignored too, so it's something that could have been a really refreshing take to see on screen. Overall, it's just disappointingly wacky right now, and I have no real hopes for it. So yeah, fingers crossed too. Moving on to TV news, let's do some quick shots. Apparently, Umbrella Academy has been renewed for a second season, which is great because that would have sucked if it wasn't. The first season left so much story open, and I'm glad they'll have the chance to really delve deeper into it and make something even more special. It was such a great time, and I'm anticipating more of it already. I just can't wait. We also have the announcement that third-party comics such as Resident Alien and Stumptown have been tapped to be shows. I hope they do them justice. They seem to be fan favorites, and the general quality of comic shows has been rising, and I hope this continues that trend. And for the last quick shot, we have the news that Superboy for Titans Season 2 has been cast with actor Joshua Orpin. I have absolutely no idea what he's ever been in, and I hope he does the role justice. My pipe dream would be that hopefully he would be more like 90s Superboy than young Justice Superboy. So yeah, while Doom Patrol has definitely been blowing Titans Season 1 out of the water, I still enjoy parts of it, and I hope that they learn from their mistakes and that Superboy can be dealt a really good hand here. So yeah, fingers crossed. And for the final bit of TV news is that we have the release of the first full trailer for the second season of The Tick, and I'm actually a little cautious about it. Not that it looks bad, it just looks more standard. The pilot for the first season had this great distinct tone about it. Now the rest of the main season diluted that tone, but kept at least the spirit of it around. The second season trailer just comes off as very goofy and cartoonish. Just feels like it's losing everything that made it stand out as a unique installment of this franchise. It's just kind of off-putting. I hope I'm wrong, but when a character steps out looking like they came from a very blunt Hanna-Barbera parody, then it's just too much. Sarah Finowitz and the guy who plays Arthur are still pretty much on form, so fingers crossed they can keep making it a great show like it can and should be, but that first trailer really did set my expectations extremely low right now. And lastly, for news, we have comic news, which is pretty much absolutely nothing. In fact, I think the only real thing is that the DC Walmart anthologies are going to be moving toward the direct market now, and that's cool. I know that people have taken a lot of pot shots and mocking some of the stories within them, but according to the deal, they've been doing so well that they want to start selling them directly to other customers and not make them Walmart exclusive. And by all means, that would be really fun, and I'd be sure to check one out if it was a character or at least a story and creative team that I really enjoyed. So yeah, hope that actually works out. Anyway, let's move on to what I read this week. Let's start off with fan cult amazement favorite, Heroes in Crisis number 6. And to be completely serious, this was entirely a non-issue. It's meant to be a character-focused issue, much like the other tie-in issue that was folded into the main series, sort of fleshing out one of the leads and a few of the victims of the massacre. It's just that Tom King can't write character death, or at least forgot to write character death. His attempts at rounding out these characters fall completely flat and make a mess of dialogue and introspection with no time to breathe or really hone in on the themes of the series. He's trying, I'll give him that, but when you have pages that are outright pinup pages again and again, it's hard to believe that it's meant to be anything more, anything with actual spirit. And then when you have deluges of dialogue trees, it's just so boring. With a twist so telegraphed, it makes you just shake your head in disbelief. There's 3 more issues to go, and it could have been a 4-page strip in some one-shot. Overall, 2 thumbs down. Next up, we have Shazam number 3, which is honestly a bit of an oddball. On one hand, it actually developed a lot of the things in a way that I found was more fitting for the series and how it should be moving forward with the plot. But on the other hand, it also feels like a lot of concessions. It's generally a fun issue, and it reveals a lot more of the structure of the Magic Realms, but it cuts into itself with out-of-place synergy. For the upcoming movie adaptation of Curse of Shazam, Mary is actually being played by a 20-something actress. Now, originally I thought this was just general standard teen casting with older actors, but it seems that Johns had made it a point to now say that Mary in his series is right around 18, which is weird because it either throws in a lot of wrenches into a relationship with Billy or means that they're not related anyway, which feels like a decision made in spite of what was set up in Curse of Shazam. I really hope that shakes out, whatever the end result. But it's such a strange thing to do, and I have very little patience for synergy bullshit. Like, at all. I've honestly dropped series that I've been reading because of how much they tie in with synergy, and it always irks me and annoys me. I just can't stand it. The rest is well done backstory, and sets up this arc in an incredibly entertaining way. And I love that the way it ends makes it seem like it's going to be less episodic than I originally thought, making for a smoother, grander scope, and I just can't wait to see how that grows. I'm engaged right now in how this story can unfold. If nothing else, the art by Eaglesham and Sen are cherries on top. I'm still entertained, and I hope this series continues to improve. But one last thing, does anyone else remember when the 7th champion was hinted to be Apache Chief? Anyone else? Because I really hope that Johns brings that back. Overall, 1 thumb up, 1 thumb down. Next up, we have Martian Manhunter number 3, and it's a miracle. 3 issues into an Orlando series, and I'm already making plans to buy the Inevitable Deluxe Edition. It's a goddamn delight, and I am having so much fun with this series. It's emotionally engaging and exciting in so many ways. I haven't enjoyed an Orlando series this much since he made Extraño hot. It's just that good. Rosmo is definitely a vital part of all this. Their art brings an atmosphere that is vibrant, bouncy, creepy, off-putting, disgusting, charged, heartwarming, saddening, and reflective. It's the whole package. And the voice that Orlando instills within John is the bow on top. His arrival on Earth and integration into the life of John Jones works so well, and portrayed and depicted perfectly. It's a beautiful sequence, and I was thoroughly immersed and entranced by it. I can't compliment it enough. It's just the bee's knees. Only 3 issues in of a 12-issue series, and I'm kind of in love with it. It's doing so much to create a well-rounded and focused vision for this character that it deserves to be a tight as hell story. I just hope that the next 8 issues know what they want to do and know how to keep up the momentum, because right now it's building up a tough and sturdy thread, and I hope that it stays that way throughout. Overall, 2 thumbs up, and I can't wait for more. Moving along, we have Wicked and the Divine number 42, and I can't believe that this series is almost over, and I am still just rolling around with it. Only a few more issues left until the end, and it can still surprise me into making me smile like a complete idiot. This issue is another that works through a lot of reveals, which I am all for. Like I've said a bunch of times before, I enjoy this series because of the general story and plot and how it unfolds. Gillen and McKelvey bring that all around in such exciting ways. This is no different. A highlight for me is that there's this really unnerving reveal that helps to bridge together a running mystery that ran through a few of the tie-in one-shots, and it does work to give everything a nice dimension. Even if it's a bit brief and maybe was guessed a lot by now, it's good closure and shows more of the canvas that the story is working on. Then there's just reveals and details that are so out of nowhere, but still so energetic that I kind of lose it. And they're just so fun that I go right with it. Like Dionysus being back is so fucking great, and I am looking forward to it so much. Like, fuck yes, the best boy returns. Then there's the usual stuff with Gillen's series here and there that I don't really jive with. Some of the humorous beats and overturns just not landing and just coming off as clever for clever's sake, or like wacky for wackiness sake. But overall, it's definitely living up to the level that it should be as it's rushing toward an end. And I can't default at that, and I'm honestly just so excited to see where it goes from here. 2 thumbs up. Speaking of finales, we have 2 coming up, and the first one being Sideways number 13, the ending of Sideways, and honestly, it was just okay enough. I think the obvious thing is that it wraps up all the stuff it needs to, so it doesn't feel entirely unsatisfying, but leaves all the extraneous plot threads open in case the character actually survives into a relaunch or fold-in, and it does either rather capably. It's just not anything really more than that. His meeting of his birth mother is very perfunctory, and it's one of the only 2 real set pieces of the issue. The second is actually confronting the murderer of his adoptive mother, and that works immensely. While it's still nothing close to the heartbreaking scene at the morgue a few issues back, it's actually genuinely thrilling and suspenseful. Sideways goes completely at it when realizing how pointless his loss was, reminding me of some amazing TV shows that have done the exact same thing, and it leads to this supremely Darkman-esque moment. It's such a shock to see him lose that sense of freewheeling innocence and enthusiasm, especially to this extent, but that's why it works. It creates an inherently powerful moment, a darkly bittersweet bite to cap everything off with. I admire that. The series sees Sideways and Ernie jetting off to finish that date that got interrupted, and if that was the last we ever saw them, I'd be okay with it. It's nicer than most characters get, and it's a little heartwarming. Sure, we have more hanging questions. Who is that person in the hood? What about the collapsing multiverse problem? The Dark Superman? What about all the dozens of characters from the character sheets that we never actually got to see integrated into the book? Maybe we'll find out. But until then, 1 thumb up, 1 thumb middle. And our second finale is Mage, the Hero Denied, number 15. Finally, after a couple of decades, we have the conclusion to the comic book fantasy epic trilogy by Matt Wagner. And well, it's really sweet. That's the main thing I take away from it. It's a sweet ending. Wagner made a point of tying each installment to a significant era in his life. And with this being his home and family life, when his kids were still kids, this innocent, optimistic, and hopeful outlook and core of this ending makes perfect sense and rounds everything off in a beautiful and honestly charming bow. You had Discovered, which had the brashness of youth, defined the freewheeling era before settling down, and Denied, the act of actually settling down. And you can tell how much it all means to Wagner. It's heartwarming, really, both within and without. But that's not to say it isn't exciting either. It packs a huge amount of punch, with action that fits and conforms around these themes. It's about that outlook, by living and breathing that philosophy, and knowing the power that it has against everything that would bring you down. It's pretty amazing, it really is. There's this giant 4-page climactic moment, which is about the internalization of that motivation against the darkness, rather than anything that's an outright fight. Kevin fighting with his family and for his family is just so damn cute, and they earn more than anything the ending that they get, with a nice little pin that works as recursive closure via his son now being emblazoned with the lightning bolt symbol after Kevin uses the last of his energy as the Arthurian to free him from his curse. And I couldn't be happier about it. They earned each and every bit of it. There's also the fact that we get the final appearance of Murph, and it's hilarious and amazing and I love it. I'm going to miss Murph, and each form of his was brilliant in this series. So here's to Murph, Kevin, Arthur, Merlin, and the Camelot that they built with their loved ones and friends and everyone that they met along the way. 2 thumbs up. Lastly, we have 2 quick shots that I don't really care about, so let's just get them over with right now. First off is Freedom Fighters number 3. Now this is the best issue so far, mainly because it didn't do anything that works against itself. It wants to be dark, patriotic, and that's what it is. And that's all it is. It doesn't seem to be wanting to do anything with itself that's interesting anymore. It's just so bland and lifeless. So 2 thumbs middle. Next up, finally, we have Fantastic Four number 6, which is just a filler for a Doom fight story. And that's a waste. There's a good gag or two, but what's the point when it's on the surface of nothing? There was potential with this series, and I was actually with it for the longest time, but this issue is just so damn bad, I just can't understand. It's not even outright bad, it's just a big load of nothing. It really is. That's all I can explain about it. Nothing. So yeah, 2 thumbs down. And so now we reach what I watched this week. Let's get it on with Gotham Season 5, episode 8, titled Nothing Shocking. I honestly didn't think this episode was going to be as fun as it ended up being, especially after the highs of the previous episode. But surprisingly, is able to keep the train rolling with another classic feeling episode. In the very weak first season of Gotham, the series had a huge problem with trying to juggle every plot at the same time, leading to episodes stuffed with barely engaging or interesting developments for the story of the characters. This episode feels like a perfected version of that, almost seamlessly cutting through 3 to 4 different plot threads, but feeling very capable about all of it. Are all of them on the same level? Hell no. But the time allotted to each reflects that, making sure that the weaker ones come and go, while the stronger ones have more time to really breathe. The main plots here are Bullock and Gordon having to contend with the ghosts of Bullock's past through a psychotic shapeshifter, Penguin and Riddler being held hostage by the ventriloquist and Scarface. Now that's a sentence I never thought I'd say. And Bruce hunting down a proto-killer Croc. Bruce's plot is not very memorable, but the other two are outright riots. Holy crap. Donald Logue continues to shine in intense and dramatic light, dealing with how corrupt and shady he used to be, and really tackling the consequences of that. The shapeshifter makes for an interesting and entertaining antagonist, and leads to some genuine pathos. His friendship with Gordon has been combated all season, and this really grapples with their original first season dynamic in an emotional way. The Penguin Riddler ventriloquist plot, it's laugh out loud insane. They're also dumbfounded and confused about the entire ridiculous situation. It's fucking magical. The reactions, interplay, and concessions work extremely well, and the voice and design of Scarface and his personality is pitch perfect. I couldn't stop smiling every time he was on screen. Honestly, this episode had it all. My only complaint, again, would be that it should be moving forward faster with the seasonal arc. This episode's a good single episode, but there's a final season to have in mind, and 5 episodes left, 4 of which are only about the main plot. There's not a lot there yet. Still, I guess we have to keep in mind the wins that we do get. And while the shapeshifter and ventriloquist don't really stick around, it was good that they were able to at least give them life on the show and do them so extremely well. And this episode will definitely go down as one of the best of the season. 2 thumbs up. Next up, we have Doom Patrol episode 3 called Puppet Patrol. I'm of 2 minds about this episode, but let me just start off by saying that overall, it was incredibly good. There's really been no dip in actual week-to-week quality with this series. It's still as emotional and stirring as funny as it's ever been, but this definitely had some aspects that stretched it, more or less the first act. The whole punchline to it is that it didn't need to happen. Good punchline. But these episodes are kind of a solid hour long, so that's 20 minutes sort of thrown out the window. There's some good character stuff in there, don't get me wrong, but I feel like it could have been mended together a lot better than as a joke. And the character stuff is still simply superb. This episode focusing so much more on Negative Man. And again, Matt Bomer and Matthew Zuck knock it out of the park. The physicality of Zuck in the full-on bandage wrap is astounding, while Bomer, in the flashbacks and voiceover, brings home a devastatingly emotional and raw performance. Larry is damn brilliant is all I'm saying. His character core is one of the best so far, and a clear high mark of the series. On the flip side, Rita and Jane don't get much to do at all. They're there for a few sparse character beats and nods, and that's a shame, but I feel like they're just ramping up to them. Cliff is an interesting case in this episode. Most of it is just taking very petty potshots at Cyborg, but in the climax, he becomes disgusted and scared of his own strength and viciousness, which might be hinting at his increasing inhumanity, or at least his fear of that possibility. But the potshots just feel very flat and uninteresting for the most part. So yeah, I'm definitely of 2 minds right now. And it could be really great with what they set up at the end. Cyborg, however, still the same as the last episode. He's got a really good arc, and he's being written very well, but his actor is just so bad. Same tone of voice every damn scene. It's hard to care were it not for the great writing. The episode overall does a lot to bridge things forward and continue to craft a show that has a tangible and depthy atmosphere with which to play with. And I'm happy for that. It gives it weight for the future. That said, one of the best parts of this heavy episode was also the goofiest, because Animal Mineral Vegetable Man makes his debut as a very chipper and annoying, but in a funny way, tourist out to get superpowers for fun and profit. And it just gets so much worse from there, and it's so fucking fantastic. Holy shit. The design is great, the actor was fun, and the character has so much potential. I can't wait for him to reappear, and I hope that happens in this very season. But yeah, what a ride. There were so many moments that brought me to like catharsis. both in terms of levity and in terms of just depression. It knows when to nail what it needs to nail down, and it's honestly still a great show. My only real complaints outside of the character and actor lapses would be that I'm worried about how it's going to parse out 15 episodes. I don't want to think that the Act 1 punchline is going to be a thread of things to come, but fingers crossed that it isn't, because overall, 2 huge thumbs up. This was great, and this series is great, and I'm just glad that week to week I have Gotham and Doom Patrol to look forward to, and I hope that continues. And so I guess that leaves us off to go into listener questions. Now we have one this week from the ever great Medea, and their question is, what are some monsters or myths that I would like to see explored in a comic? Now, I guess I have a really strange answer for this, but that would have to be the Green Man. And now I don't mean the woodland mythological creature that pervades Europe, that Green Man. I don't mean him at all. I mean the actual pseudo-cryptid from North America. Now, if you don't know the legend about this Green Man, don't worry. No one really knows either. In fact, I have no idea how this ever became an urban legend. The first I ever heard about it was on this episode of Freaky Links, this show about legends and cryptids and all that stuff. But it astounded me ever since. And then I got even more interested when I learned about the real life history. You see, back in the early 1900s, a young boy got his face disfigured in a railroad track accident, leaving him with an eyeless face. Now, he lived to a ripe age, and as an adult he would take walks to pass the time. And as the years went by, local kids began to notice him, and through sheer word of mouth, made him into, well, a cryptid. This strange green glowing figure or creature that would stalk the streets looking for victims along this particular route. And after learning about the guy's past, it's always struck me as really depressing that happened. Apparently, a documentary on this guy has been in development hell for over a decade, with no actual release date in sight. And so I feel like this story, if it can't be told through film, could probably be told through the medium of comics, like Box Brown's biographies on Andre the Giant or Andy Kaufman, something to catalog the odd impact this person had on pop culture, and yet not really knowing the actual person or the reasoning behind any of these things. Like, the reason he glows green is because of the residual electricity from his railroad accident, which just strikes me as out there. Like, who even thinks this stuff up? Obviously kids would have to, but it seems like something that deserves more exploration and deserves to illuminate this guy and who he was, outside of all this catty hearsay that, kids can get up to when they don't really know much. Or even if it wasn't a straight retelling of this guy's life, maybe at least something with the same grandiosity and humanity that was given to John Merrick in Moore and Campbell's From Hell, where Moore and Campbell really do try to make him come off as a regular kind of person who just had like this presence that made him the fascination of so many others. Just anything. I feel like it could be really interesting. I mean, overall, he was just a poor man who got dealt a bum hand, and he deserves to be remembered for more than that. I think that everyone does, at least in some way. So yeah, that's my answer to your question, Medea, and that I hope that it was a satisfactory answer. It's something that I've been really thinking about for a long time. And thank you again for the question. It was a really fantastic one, and I made it a point to really pick an answer that would actually be something that I wanted to talk about, because it deserved that. And so thank you again for all the questions that you have ever sent in. They mean so much, and I want to say thank you to everyone who has ever sent in a question. They're all great. I have so much fun with them, and it really does keep the show going. Thank you so much. And if anyone out there has their own questions or comments or topics they would like to hear discussed on the show, you can always find me on Twitter at THE_SNICKMAN. I also want to give a shout out to the cover artist for the show at DOTEMCEE. Go check them out. They really deserve it. They've also started production on their own Ultraman fan zine. I'll post the links below for that, because, if you're interested in giant monster stuff, you might want to check it out, give them a follow. Anyway, next week we see the release of Captain Marvel. We'll see how that shakes out. I hope you have a great week, and see you then.